Welcome, everyone, and Happy New Year from Dead Talk Live. And I can't think of a better way to start the new year off than with our guest tonight, Ellen Adair from hit shows as Homeland, The Sinner, movies such as Trick. Ellen, Happy New Year. Thank you for being here with us. How are you doing?
You know what? I'm great, especially given the general state of the world. I feel like I might be an appropriate Happy New Year gift for the year 2022, which I sort of feel like is generally, you know, it's like read the room, years aren't happy anymore. A
Exactly,
little bit.
exactly.
Yeah.
And let's just hope 2022 gets a little better than 2021 was. So,
Just by the end, like if we can just have it be better by the end, I'll consider that a
me
success.
too. Me too. I totally agree. And let's just get right to it. Your career started when you were approximately like 18 years old in 2006. I love hearing the stories of how actors got into acting, whether it was something they knew from childhood. And I've heard some actors' stories where they just sort of walked right into it and found great success. So, what was your story like, and how did you get into it?
Yeah, I have wanted to be an actor since I can remember. Like, since I was a little child, I always wanted to be an actor, which I always say, like, belies some lack of personal development. That, like, that's what I wanted to do when I was 5, and here I am still just making believe for a living. I mean, I'm so lucky. So, yeah, I mean, though I wanted to be an actor when I was a child, I was not like a child actor.
Hmm.
I just was, doing kids' plays and theater camp and stuff like that. And my first sort of professional thing was theater, and it came when I was 15. I was Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream with
Nice.
the Indiana Shakespeare Company. Yeah, which was really, really fun. So, uh, that's I guess kind of where the journey got started.
And come on, it's amazing. Like you said, you get to go on screen, pretend, have fun, and you get paid for it. I mean, come on, there can't be anything better than that.
It's the best life. It's the actual best life.
It
Yeah.
is. It is.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, there's a lot of other things that aren't, actually getting to act and doing the craft that I feel like are the dues that actors pay in order to get to, just be like, I'm gonna pretend like I'm the sheriff and like you're the detective. And obviously, there's a reason that I thought of that particular scenario this evening. But like, yeah, it's like, it's just like being a kid and kind of being like, well, if I'm this and you're that, then like, what are we gonna do? It's the best.
it is the best. So, like I said, you got your start in 2006, and you appeared in a lot of television shows, hit TV shows. You did some shorts. And then in 2019, well, that's when the movie was released, Patrick Lussier casted you in Trick. First off, what were your feelings in regards to horror? Because Trick is pretty gory. So, what are your feelings in regards to horror?
Well, it's been a journey with me and horror, John. So I was actually raised without a television, and I didn't have a television until 2010. So, like, for most of my life, I did not have a TV. It's hilarious
Wow.
that I was like working in TV before I had one. Of course, by that point, like the computers had sort of become a version of television. Um, but for that reason, I'm I'm less so now that I've had a decade with a television, but I'm very porous about what I watch. Like I take on the if the person in the television show is stressed about their lives, I will also be stressed while I am watching the show or the movie or whatever it is. So I have not historically been a horror fan. I had an experience. I mean, I'm trying to think if it's like the first horror movie that I saw in my life, or if I'd seen another one before then. But I think maybe not. I think the first horror movie that I saw was Event Horizon.
Oh, that was
Um,
scary. That's a
it was
scary movie.
pretty scary. And I love sci-fi, so like it was at a slumber party, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll sign on for this. There's a spaceship, let's go." And I was terrified. Like I saw Sam Neill's face in the darkness of my room for like an entire month. And I thought, maybe this is not my preferred genre. However, what I will say is for my whole life, my favorite overall genre is the people fighting with swords genre of film. So it's not that I cannot deal with violence in a film. It is not that I even can't deal with gore. I mean, at around the same time that I didn't necessarily respond particularly well to Event Horizon, I loved Gladiator.
Hmm.
So maybe it's like a contradiction. Anyway, so all of this is to say, I have developed a real appreciation for horror as a genre. I still think it would be unfair to call myself a horror fan just because I feel like that uh, indicates a level of knowledge that I don't feel like I have.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sort of behind on everything, right? Because I didn't have a television until 2010. But yes, I really like horror now. There are some sort of subgenres of horror that like particularly terrify me. I have never seen The Exorcist. I don't know if I'll see The Exorcist because it's like possession is the thing that is the scariest for me, sort of like supernatural elements. So something like Trick that's just like I mean, I think that there's obviously some fun twists in Trick, but a more straightforward like slasher film I is easier for me to enjoy than something where people are getting possessed by the devil, like in, let's say, Event Horizon, for example.
Event Horizon. I mean, what a great and I think somewhat underrated movie. Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Neill, a very, very scary movie. I saw that in the theaters when it first came out.
Oh
Um,
God.
Now, you had, like I said, a very successful television career until Patrick Lussier came calling. When it came time to do that film, and first of all, was that your first full feature length film? According to
Um,
IMDb, it is.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, maybe it was. I should know my own history better than that. But yeah, I think maybe it was. I mean, I am trying to remember if there was like a, super, super low budget indie film that I shot like right out of college that might have preceded that, but like that film doesn't even exist, so I don't think it
Yeah,
really counts.
according to
Yeah.
IMDb, Trick is your first full length feature film. So, what were your feelings when Patrick casted you and you were doing this feature film? Was it weird coming from doing predominantly television your whole career up until that point?
No, and I mean, I think what I'm remembering is I might have shot a film the previous fall that just came out after that. But I don't think I really thought about it at all. Obviously, like I'm surprised by you sharing this fact of my biography with me. So yeah, I guess I didn't really think about it. Um, I think I was extremely excited by a lot of things. Now, one thing that I sort of left out of my brief biography of me and the horror genre earlier is that I had said for a long time, like, I would love to do horror. I really should do horror because I'm very easily scared. Like, it is very easily real to me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just like it's easy for me to make the scary thing real and have the shivers go up my spine. Of course, the hilarious fact with that is that of the horror things that I have done, which are now a decent number after Trick as well as that film, I'm never actually the person who's super scared. Like usually I'm the person who's like, I don't know, man. Like, is this real? that's that's me in that and a movie that I shot at the end of 2020 that's going to be out pretty soon, which is really fun actually. Anyway, I might have derailed myself slightly from your original question
No, no,
because I think I
actually,
forgot.
you answered it. Because TV, I've had a lot of people tell me what's the big difference between television and film is the pacing. Television,
Mm.
things are done really quickly. You gotta go by the schedule. In film, you have a little bit more leeway, maybe a little bit more time. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that that's true. I think that something that is not universally true that I've found, and it could just be that most of the, well, all of the films that I have worked in, I have never been in like a big studio film, have been independent on some level or another. And so consequently, there's just a little bit more of a collaborative element to them. There's a little bit more, I just feel like my ability to say, hey, what about this moment? What if I say this? And to be totally fine if that's not appropriate, but to like be able to offer that up is not something that I feel like, at least on the television shows that I have worked on, or at the level that I have worked in television, not being number one on the call sheet on a television show yet. Um, I I have not sort of felt like there would be that freedom.
Okay.
So I think that that's certainly a difference. And yes, I would say that there's a difference in pace, but also I feel like there's a little bit of a difference in pace in horror and not horror in my experience so far.
Okay.
Um, which is just that, yeah, horror generally needs more space. Like everything, even if you're ultimately the editor is going to chop out some of that time, I find that in the performing of it,
Mm-hmm.
very often, um, the director will say, no, you can take a little bit more time with it. And me, of course, I think a lot of the sort of, not all of my early television roles, but a number of them are like fast talking lawyer and reporter types. And so I'm used to, jumping on my cues and saying what I can say as
Chief of
quickly as possible
staffs and
and getting
so
out.
on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think like, I don't, I don't think I've ever gotten the note, great, but can you do it faster, on a film? And I have occasionally gotten that note on TV, but I have often gotten the note like, great, but like take your time with it,
Nice.
on in film. But the through line that I was sort of drawing is that I last year I worked on my first TV horror show, which is Archive 81, which is coming out in like 10 days on Netflix. I'm
Nice.
just in one episode of it, but it's like it's so good, and I was just really honored to be any small part of it. And that was something that the director, Rebecca Thomas, who I just like worshipped her, kept on saying to me and the other actor that I was working with, just like, no, but you can like take your time with it a little bit more. And we were just looking at each other like so used to working in TV, being like, okay, yeah, yeah, we're gonna take our time with it. Yeah, it was great. It was
That's
really great.
awesome. You've had the, I mean, I don't know what the right word is, pleasure of working with so many amazing actors. Let's take Omar Epps, who was your co-star in Trick. Great
Yeah.
actor. How did you find him in collaborating with him and working scenes together? Describe the experience of what it was like, collaborating with Omar.
It was really great working with him. And I think what one of the qualities that he has as an actor that I sort of loved the most in terms of our dynamic, with his Detective Denver and my Sheriff Lisa Jane, was how quickly his motor is running, but privately.
Hmm.
Like it's so clear that so much is going on inside for him, but that he is, being the incredibly accomplished on-screen actor that he is, he's really keeping that hidden in a way that was always fascinating for me as his scene partner to try to divine and to sort of try to figure out what he was thinking. It was like, I mean, that's my favorite part of being an actor, is getting to work with other actors,
Hmm.
is getting to think like, what are you thinking right now, and like getting to be curious about what their experience is. And like his inner motor is so powerful, but so, um, uh, I don't know,
Yeah, there's
like
just
sometimes
something.
hard to read
Yeah, I
in a
mean,
way that was just like great, like absolutely great to work with. Yeah.
I became a fan of Omar Epps in his 8 season run on House. I don't know if you've ever watched House, but he was just
Yes.
absolutely amazing, and he's such a great actor. Now, when it came to your character in Trick, which is Sheriff Jane, did Patrick have any one-on-one conversations with you on how he thought the character should be played? Did he allow you a lot of freedom to bring your own ideas as to how the character should be played? How did your interactions with Patrick Lussier go?
Yeah, well, I remember he wasn't in the original auditions, and so the first time that we talked, we had a long phone call, just, like talking about the character and talking about the project. And when I read the script, I had responded so strongly to the story, which I think, is really fun and has a fantastic twist for anybody who hasn't seen it. But I also just really responded to the character of Lisa Jane as she was written. Like it's the thing that people say about like a character just sort of like jumps out. I was like, oh, I know who this person is inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, had just gone into the audition with a sort of an interpretation of who she was. And apparently Patrick liked it because he cast me. And so that was sort of the start of the conversation. But we did, we talked a lot about sort of what her, or at least I think I was curious about kind of like her path to becoming the sheriff kind of young. And so we talked about what her backstory was to a certain degree, which I also then kind of, filled in a lot more of the gaps for myself in my work on the character. But I remember, I mean, one of my other favorite things about being an actor, besides getting to play with other actors, is doing research because I'm just a nerd. I'm just like Hermione Granger personality type. So I remember being honest with Patrick about feeling like, I did not know a lot about the horror genre at that point. And so I said, what are some films that you want me to watch in sort of preparation for like, what's the mood of this? Or, where might I just kind of like take some inspiration for the tone of the film. And so he gave me a list. I wish I could remember all of the films. I remember some of them to watch, and so I gratefully and joyfully did my homework
Now, that's very
for the show.
interesting because I've spoken to quite a few actors, and everybody has their own method. Some actors say the script is their guide, according to a character. When I asked a question in regards to backstory, so according to you, yeah, you have the material, you have the script in front of you, but it's important for you to play the character to its fullest, for you to fill in the stuff that we don't get to see on the screen as to what makes that character tick. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, just because they've got to be a whole person. And so they've got to carry everything in their life with them up until that point. And so knowing the more specific that I can be about what my life has been and about what therefore is my attitude about the world and my attitude about other people and the attitude about the place that I live in is obviously, we are all, as human beings, telling ourselves stories about what the world is
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And I think lots of times we don't think that we're telling ourselves that story. We just think, oh, well, this is how the world is. But actually, everybody's constructing that. So it's very important for me, for any character that I play, for me to be very clear about like what is their story about what the world is.
Yeah.
Because I do think that, I think backstory is very important, but I think for me, it starts with the text. It starts with the script, and it starts with what am I doing and like what is my relationship to the people and to the world around me, and how do I love or not sometimes, and that sort of that's then I kind of like build backwards from that to be like, well, what would I have experienced to get me to this place?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just in the way that like when we're in our lives, we're not necessarily thinking about our past lives, we just carry that with us necessarily, so that then when I'm in a scene, I'm not like sitting there thinking about, oh my gosh, when I was a child, I saw a dog killed and it scarred me forever or whatever. Like, I'm just thinking about, who is this person, what is my relationship to them, what are they doing, like what are the real life questions that I as a person in that scene have. But yeah, I think you gotta know exactly where your character's coming from.
And do you find yourself bringing a lot of your real life experience into your characters to draw up particular emotions for a scene?
That's a great question. And honestly, I feel like it is there are two different schools of thought about this. And I feel like I have in my life I have utilized both. And it's interesting that, see, I sort of came from the theater world first, and in theater I would tend to not think about my own life, because what I found was that like the more that I thought about something, the more it lost its potency. So if I get to do a play for like 60 performances, or even 30 performances, if I'm relying on thinking about my life, it's just not gonna work after the like seventh performance at the best. But the character's life, because it's always fresh to me, like in a way, because I'm not retrieving that memory, because it's happening to me right in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
that it would was more regularly get me to the place
Yeah.
that the story wanted me to go to. However, I feel like with on camera work, there's this. I've studied for many years with Bob Krakauer, who's just a great on camera guy. And he has this word that, because it's sort of variously interpreted, I think is maybe even kind of being phased out, but it's personalization. And the way that I understand personalization, because everybody understands it in different ways, is that it's like figuring out, well, what is the analog to this thing in my life,
Okay.
so that I can make sure that it is like very, very deeply felt. So I will do that work when I'm like literally first thinking about the script. So if I'm like, well, who is this character to me? Like, who is a person that is like this to me in my life? Or if there's not that person, I'll try to imagine like an actor that I know really well playing that part, just so that it sort of like gets into my gut a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or I'll be like, well, this memory that this person has, what is something that is sort of a similar memory in my life, or what is like a similar relationship that I have. And so I kind of go into those places, but then once I'm actually doing it, I don't think about my life. uh I just think about the person's life, the
The
character's life.
character. Yeah, totally
Yeah.
makes sense. Now, the sheriff that you play in Trick, Patrick breaks a lot of the stereotype types in regards to the final girl, makes your character a very strong female presence in the film. In fact, the movie starts off with Omar Epps' character sort of being the lead, and then about halfway through, you become the lead in the story. At least that's how I interpreted it.
I'm delighted to hear that. I always thought it was Omar's story.
how do, how do you feel about how Patrick, empowered, Sheriff Jane, and how he incorporated that into the script?
Well, I mean, it's one of the things that really, really drew me to the script, was, how strong my character, and also I think how strong Cheryl, Christina Reyes's character. Christina does a beautiful work in the movie, and in some ways, like I could see somebody being like, actually, it ended up being Cheryl's movie because Cheryl has like the farthest distance between 2 points, in the film. So, uh, I I do think that there's sort of like quiet politics in the movie that just have to do, rather than anything being like explicitly political, with just the people that they chose to populate the world with.
And
And I
that is
and I mean
done
that.
quite a bit in horror, where with social commentary, politics that are not spoken. It's done very often in horror.
This is one of the things that is like that really makes me like the horror genre a lot, is that I feel like every horror movie that I've ever seen is always about something else
Hmm.
also. Like it's and so I feel like you get people saying all the time, well, it's not really a horror movie, it's this. I'm like, yeah, but that's every horror movie.
Yeah.
Like why are we afraid of actually like just owning the really great thing about the genre, that like what it always is like tapping into whatever sort of deep-seated fears we have about any number of issues,
Yeah.
whether they're like social issues or political issues or anyway. um, Sorry if I got
No, no,
got
no.
us off tangent again. That's like my special skill. It's just being like, oh, what's
I
this?
love
That's
it. I
interesting.
love it.
Um, so yeah, I mean the strength of the women in the movie, and like the strength of Sheriff Jane in particular as the role that I was auditioning for, just really really excited me. And I loved getting to have that action sequence where I try to save one of my deputies. Not to spoil anything, it's not entirely successful. But like that kind of thing was very exciting to me in the reading of it, and like so fun in the doing of it. Like I was just like, yeah, like I just want to shoot an action movie. It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Would you say that this role has been to date maybe your most physically demanding and also psychologically demanding role that you've had?
Uh, I would say to date, it probably is the most physically demanding role that I've had. Although I am cast in another movie that doesn't have an exact time frame for when we're shooting because you might have heard there's like this global pandemic. Um, and I think that will be more physically challenging, in a great way. Like I'm really excited for it. And in terms of psychologically demanding, that's a very interesting question. And I I don't know. I feel like I shot another horror movie last summer, that I cannot share the name yet.
Okay.
But I had a great time. It's with a company called Philly Born Films. Mike Walsh wrote it and Bridget Smith directed, and I just had a great time. And that was a very, very psychologically complex film to shoot. And I feel like there's more there are more highs and lows with that. Whereas I feel like with Trick, and I feel like in some ways, even though they're very different people with different views of the world, like Lisa Jane is put through the ringer in Trick, in a way that I sort of feel like Bess in The Sinner also is.
Hmm.
Like, there's not a lot of days in Trick where you're like, this was a good day for Sheriff Lisa Jane. um, but yeah, I think that there's so much interesting things to mine in shooting Trick, with sort of my relationship with Denver and Cheryl and the other people in the town, and my like I think almost like mothering need to try to take care of my town and to feel like I'm constantly failing in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, was hard.
Now, okay, now let's move on to some of your TV work. You've appeared in two of at least my favorite shows, critically acclaimed. You've appeared in season 2 of The Sinner and season 7 of the Emmy Award winning Homeland. Two great shows, great casts. Let's start with The Sinner. Of course, it stars Bill Pullman and Jessica Biel. Not only was the star in the first season, but she's like sort of the main executive producer of the entire show. When it came to The Sinner, was Jessica on the set a lot of the time? Or was she sort of in the background? What was her role as the executive producer on that show?
She was definitely on set.
Okay.
I don't know that she was on set. I don't know. I certainly didn't see her every single day that I filmed, but I have a distinct memory of fangirling her very early in the process when I got to meet her, because I think that her performance in the first season of that show is one of my favorite television performances that I've ever seen. I
Cora,
think
yeah.
she's just stunning. And so, I felt like I had to tell her that the instant that I saw her.
That is
Yeah.
what got a lot of people hooked on that show is not only her performance, the chemistry between her and Bill Pullman was phenomenal. Was
Oh,
phenomenal. Now, in The Sinner, your character dies in the very first episode, if I'm remembering correctly, near the very, very beginning. But the beauty of The Sinner is the way they tell the story. I think that's
mhm.
a big reason why it was such a successful show is it has a very unique way of storytelling. Do you agree with it? Do you like that way of storytelling?
Oh, I love it so much. Yeah, in which it's sort of like the mystery is unraveling back and learning some of the backstory. Like I love when like what happened in the past ends up sort of fulfilling a narrative function
Mm-hmm.
in something that's being created. Uh, like another example of this that's a horror thing that you might know is the film The Battery. Do you know that film? Jeremy
Yes.
Gardner
Yeah.
film?
Yes.
Yeah. And I love how early in the film it's planted that like wait something happened to them and you don't actually find out what that was until the end of the film. Like it has a sort of a narrative payoff what happened in the past, as
Yeah.
opposed to being sort of like we've got to get all the exposition out in the first 10 minutes so that then we can go on our journey. So yeah, I mean, I think that that's very satisfying. I'm watching Station 11 right now. I don't know if you're also watching it,
I'm not.
and
I'm
and
not
the way,
watching that yet. Yeah.
yeah, the way that that is also sort of like moving around in time is very just wonderful to unpack. It's like you, as a viewer, you don't even know what is the next piece that's going to come because you don't know, like, is it going to be from the past or is it going to be from the future? Like, you don't know. So yeah, I think that that's one of the things that's really wonderful about the way that Derek Simmons has constructed all 4 seasons of The Sinner so far.
Yeah.
And Bill Pullman, God, I
Mm.
just watching Bill Pullman listen is like drinking a glass of water. Like it's just like you feel like you've come through the desert and now you get to watch Bill Pullman just listen to somebody else talk and you are quenched. It's so good.
And I'm so happy for him that this show came along and, allowed him to show his talent. I mean, this is a person who has been working in the industry for a very long time. And for him to come back in this franchise and be a huge part of, well, I mean, he is the franchise as to why
Hmm.
this is so successful and to see him act and to see him work it is so refreshing. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did not actually have any scenes with Bill because your character died in the very first episode. Is that true?
You're right. Yeah. I mean, there was a scene where I was a dead body.
Yeah.
Um,
That must
I
be.
often saw him in the makeup trailer. He's like an exceptionally nice man, but no, we didn't really work together.
I mean, that must be a little bit of a regret that you didn't get to have at least one scene where you got to work with him and you guys got to talk on front of the camera, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Although I will say that, like, I was just definitely not starved for scene partners in that season of The Sinner. Like, Adam David Thompson is such a good actor, and Alicia Hennig is just a prodigy,
Hmm.
and I love him forever. He's just a brilliant, like, souled human being. And then, like, getting to work with Carrie Coon.
Hmm.
Oh my God, Carrie Coon is just. I mean, I think maybe the coolest person that I've ever met in my life.
I agree. I mean, I
and
never met her,
and like
but she definitely seems like one of the best.
such a good actor. Like such, oh my God, just yeah, great. And like Hannah Gross, it was a really wonderful season for, as long as we're talking about like strong female characters, for a lot of really strong female characters. I still remember one time when Carrie said, if a bunch of women are talking about a man, but he's a baby, does this pass the Bechdel test? And I was like, good point, Carrie Coon. Yeah.
That is a very, very good
She's
point.
screamingly funny. Like, she would, and I wish, because of course now this shot like 3 years ago, and I mean, there's been this global pandemic, so, which I mentioned before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wish I could remember some of the stories, but I remember like laughing so hard that my face hurt. Just, with some of the like observations that she would make.
Now, Homeland, season 7, which is your season on Homeland, it was also in 2018. Did you shoot Homeland first, or did you shoot The Sinner first?
I shot Homeland first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in
And I was completely wrapped on Homeland before I even auditioned for The Sinner, so there was no sort of like overlap there.
Okay. Now, Homeland, Emmy award winning show, a brilliant cast again. Claire Danes, Mandy Patinkin. I mean, it goes on and on. Was there any kind of an intimidation factor when you got cast and you came on the set with all those actors? Were you intimidated at all? Did it make you feel welcome, part of the family? How did that all work out?
I would say that they made me feel immediately welcome. And it's funny, I don't remember being that intimidated. I just felt excited. I just felt like, yeah, like I get to play with some of my heroes,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the best day of my life. Um, and I think some of that has to do with like the kindness of Leslie Linka Glatter and some of the other producers on the show, who were so not only was the cast very warm, but they were also just really I don't know how to say this without like sounding grandiose. They seemed very thrilled with what I was doing,
That's
like
awesome.
from the get-go, in a way that I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess if you like what I'm doing, I can just keep doing that. And I was told by some of the writers that they sort of enjoyed my take on the character so much that my character ended up being much larger than she was going to originally be, which is, I think, the best compliment, and like
Yeah.
I will hold to my heart on my deathbed, whenever that should be. Yeah.
You have
um
5 episodes in season 7 of
yeah.
Homeland. Now, Mandy Patinkin, I would have to say he is in my top 10 favorite actors. Everything he does, he makes amazing. I was so sad when he left Criminal Minds after 2 seasons, and he was very clear about it. He's like, this show is getting a little bit way too dark for me. And I
Mm.
respect him for that, you know? And he landed on Homeland, and him and Claire Danes and their chemistry together on that show is, again, what made that such a winner. And you play the chief of staff, working opposite your Senator Sam Paley is the character's name. Dylan Baker, another phenomenal actor. What was your experience like with Dylan?
Oh, it was the absolute best. So, a sort of a funny story is that, like, maybe the second day that we worked together, he said to me, like, "Oh, you look kind of familiar to me." And I said, "Oh gosh, well, I was hoping this wouldn't come up, but in like 2011, I fangirled you in the Times Square train station right after I'd seen God of Carnage. I'm very not shy about telling actors how incredible I think that they are. Like, it just, I don't know. Maybe it could be because I feel enough like that we are peers that I'm just like, you should know how great you are, is how I feel all the time. So, so yes, I had just walked right up to him and he was so kind and so gracious. This is like when I was, nobody, like 7 years before we would ever work on Homeland together. And he was just kind of like, oh, that's nice, and I told him like, you were so nice and it made my week. And it wasn't until like later that like a week later, we were still shooting the same episode. And he mentioned something about Billions. And I just sort of offhand, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm on that show. And he was like, oh, that's where I saw you, you were on Billions. And I had revered Dylan Baker, obviously, like for so many years. The thing that I said to him when I met him in the Times Square train station is like, Dylan Baker classes up everything that he does.
Yeah.
Like whatever I'm watching, if Dylan Baker is suddenly there, it's immediately like 10 times better. And so like that had been such a deeply held belief for me for so long that it never occurred to me that Dylan Baker could have seen me in something.
That is such a great story.
Oh gosh. And the thing to know about him, because, he is usually, just because it's like the storytelling of his facial features, he's usually playing a bad guy. He is like perhaps the nicest person that I've ever met. He's like, it's so kind, like really like excessively and unnecessarily generous, I would say. So yes, I just want to spread the gospel of Dylan Baker all the time.
That is awesome. Speaking of Times Square, are you a native New Yorker?
No, I'm from Philadelphia originally.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. But I lived in Queens for 12 years now, so by some metrics, I have gained my New Yorker card.
Well, you know how that I was born and raised in Queens, so
we're in Queens.
Literally a mile down the road from Citi Field. And in Corona, Jackson Heights, Elmhurst.
I'm in Jackson Heights.
We're neighbors. I mean, I'm not there now. I own my house there.
We're spiritual neighbors.
Yeah. I live outside D.C. now, but I still own my home in Queens, the home that I grew up. Wow, I can't believe you're in Jackson Heights. That is so cool. But
I love Jackson Heights so much. It feels to me more like my home than anywhere else in the United States. Like
really?
I just feel a spiritual kinship with it so much. Like there are moments, as I think probably anybody in this country, no matter like what side of the political divide you happen to fall on, there are moments where everybody in this country is like, gosh, I just don't know how I feel about the state of this country. And I certainly feel that way, but like, there's not a day that like I would not fight and die for Jackson Heights.
Well, just because, in order to become, if you're not born in New York, we have a little, inside New Yorker thing that to be an anointed New Yorker, you have to be anointed by somebody who was born and raised there. And just because of that comment, Ellen, I am anointing you a true New Yorker.
Today is the day. Oh, thank you. Oh, Happy New Year to me.
That is so fast. This has been such a fun chat. Now, you have a lot of upcoming projects that are in post-production. Which one are you most excited about that we should keep an eye out for?
Gosh. Oh no, don't make me pick one of my children. I'll just say these are the next two that should be coming out, and they're both horror or horror adjacent. And one of them is Archive 81, based on the podcast. Again, I'm just in one episode, but like I was like, I will do anything to be in this after.
And that sounds like an alien sci-fi type thing. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's certainly like within the like large and beautiful arms of the horror genre myself.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
And what's the other one?
And I mean, I don't actually know how it ends. Like I didn't read the whole thing, so I don't know the degree to which they're aliens or not, to be honest. So
Okay.
I can't even give you a spoiler. And the next thing that should be out is this movie Cryptid, which is a monster movie. So it's in that like particular subdivision of the horror genre that I had a great time working on.
I mean, would you say that Trick has really opened your heart and even maybe grown a fondness to the horror genre?
Absolutely, it has. Yeah, I
Nice.
mean, also my husband is a huge horror fan, and so he has been very much enjoying me. I think, yeah, just like getting more and more into the genre. And I mean, it's to the degree that like he and I are writing a horror comedy together right now.
Nice. That
Yeah,
is so
yeah.
awesome. Ellen, thank you so much for coming on here. I had a blast talking with you. You are such a fun, talented actress, and I'm excited to see future stuff from you. And it's going to be awesome. I loved you in Trick, Homeland, The Sinner. Like I said, I think you're a really, truly talented actress, and you can do anything you set your mind to. And it's a true honor and pleasure to watch you on the screen.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
no, I mean it. Thank you so much. Are there any final thoughts you want to share with our audience before we go?
I want to thank you for having me on this show. It's been a real blast for me too. And thank you for giving me those beautiful compliments and also anointing me as official New Yorker.
You are. You're one
Like
of
this
us
is
now.
like yeah, like January 4th, 2022. This is a big day in my life and I'm so grateful
My
and
wife's best
2022 is
friend has been
already off to a better start.
My wife's best friend has been living in New York for the last 20 years. I still have not granted her that. She has not earned it. Not yet.
Well, that means all the more, And I'll just hope that her day will come.
I want to thank Ellen Adair, who has been our guest today, and starting off the year 2022 on a great note. Thank you to our audience who's watching this live, who will watch this archive, who will watch this on digital streaming later on. Uh, Thank you for tuning in tonight, and until next time, which will be tomorrow, stay safe. And on behalf of Ellen and myself, stay walking. Good night, everybody.